Flyers open their season Friday night at the Wells Fargo Center with a 4-game homestand. 4 games in 8 days at the Wells Fargo Center, and we've got it all covered with tonight's special guest. He is from HockeyBuzz.com. We say hello to Bill Meltzer. Welcome back, Bill. How you doing?
How you doing, Chet? Good to talk to you.
Doing all right. Bill is going to be here shortly. The other Bill, he's a little tied up with some work stuff, but don't worry about him. As a hockey guy, Bill, I know you love this time of year, but we haven't talked to you in 14 months somehow. I don't know how that happened. But before we talk about this year, let's go back and reminisce about last year. It didn't work out quite. Oh, yeah, I know. We'll keep that brief. I thought they might be a true contender last year. I guess I was wrong about that.
Yeah, I mean, there was so much promise built off the season before that. And, it was really Murphy's Law last season. I mean, other than maybe Joel Farabee having a breakout year, Sean Couturier had a good year, but I mean, as a team and guys they were counting on, young players, I mean, everything went wrong. Simple as that.
Yeah, it sure did. Hey, you mentioned Joel Farabee. I was going to ask about him. How good is he, and what is his upside?
I think Joel is going to have a long, strong career in the NHL. If he's such a mature young player, if you would make a long-term commitment the way the Flyers have with a guy who's still 21 years old, is still in his entry-level deal, and you're locking him up for as long as the team has, you'd think that that's a lot of risk that's involved. But honestly, I think there's a strong potential that contract's going to end up being a bargain for the Flyers. He's, I don't think he's ever going to be a 40-goal guy or anything like that, but I think he's going to be a good, solid, all-around hockey player. Get you 30 goals a year in a good year. Play a good two-way game. Give you a good solid effort every single night. Play the power play. Be able to move from left wing to right wing. I mean, he's the real deal. He's a really strong young hockey player.
Yeah, I like him. Well, as we said, it was a disappointing year last year, so not surprisingly, there were a lot of changes made in the offseason. Lots of familiar faces gone. Jake Voracek, Shane Gostisbehere, Nolan Patrick, Phil Myers, Robert Haig, Brian Elliott among them. Now, Morgan Frost is back, and as I put the roster up here, if I can do that, there are newcomers such as Ryan Ellis, Cam Atkinson, Rasmus Ristolainen, Keith Yandel, and backup goalie Martin Jones. Are they a better team?
On paper, they certainly are. I mean, the biggest thing is, the Flyers last year had the worst goals against average in the NHL, and you're not. It doesn't matter how many goals you score, you can't contend with that. I mean, we talked about how everything went wrong. The year before that, they were 7th best goals against average in the NHL and 7th highest in goals per game. To be up in the top third of the league in both, that's a solid playoff team. That's why you figured going into last year, this is going to be a playoff team. It's going to be a contender. I mean, that goes against last season. It was team defense fell apart, and then they dragged the goaltending down with it. And then the goaltending started failing when the team defense got a little bit better. So it was really a mess. But that's on paper they've certainly added to the blue line. Now they have some injuries right now on the blue line. Hopefully Ryan Ellis, who's the biggest addition, and Rasmus Ristolainen, who's also a big addition. And hopefully they'll be healthy for the opener, and particularly Ellis, who has an injury history. You really cross your fingers that he doesn't miss much time over the course of the season. But at least on paper, with the players they've added, it should be a better team. And Carter Hart, I figure, should bounce back this year to a large degree too. Well,
assuming Ryan Ellis is healthy, I guess he's going to be paired with Provorov. That's going to be a good defensive pairing, is it not?
It should, and I think that Ellis is one of those defensemen who can pretty much play with anybody. But if you give him a talented partner like Provorov, who they should read off each other very well. You saw it in practices. You saw it in the preseason games that they played together. They work very well together. Ellis is very good at putting passes where his defensive partner wants them, and he can move up by. So there were so many times last year where Provorov would get a puck in his skates or have to reach behind him, and next thing you knew, he'd be getting hit into the boards and turning a puck over. And I mean, some of it's also Ivan's fault. He certainly didn't have his own best season by any stretch of the imagination. But I mean, 2 seasons ago, he had a really good chemistry with Matt Niskanen. I think this pair will be better than that pair was.
Hmm. Now, Oskar Lindblom, of course, coming back from his cancer battle was a nice story, but to be honest, he didn't have a great year last year, and that's understandable. Is he going to be stronger and better, you think, this year?
He's looked at in camp. That's been one of the really promising stories in camp, is that Oskar, first of all, his fitness testing, all his strength testing was back to the level it was before the cancer diagnosis. But just watching him in games, a big part of Oscar's game is winning battles on the boards, forechecking, and getting to the net. And he was doing all those things in the preseason. The goals weren't coming yet in the preseason. He did have some nice assists, but yeah, Oskar Lindblom looked like himself again. I think that was a really good story, before the season.
Absolutely. Hey, I know he's not ready to go just yet, although he is technically on the opening roster, I guess. But what is Kevin Hayes' status? How long will he be out?
Well, he's no longer the roster because the Flyers made a waiver claim today, and they didn't have the cap space. They claimed a guy by the name of Zach McEwen from the Vancouver Canucks. But his timetable is still the same. He's still looking at that 6 to 8 week timetable, and the Flyers needed the cap space by putting him in long term to be able to bring in and really anybody. So because they had a minimum number of players. So now, at least for the time being, they have the flexibility to add somebody if there's injuries or whatever. But the Flyers have to be so careful with this injury because, he had abdominal muscle surgery back in the spring, and he had to go, it was basically the same injury all over again in September. And if he has another one this season, he's done for the year. And it could be a long absence, and also sometimes when a guy comes back from this kind of injury, it can take quarter of a season to a half a season for a guy really to feel like himself again. So really, they're well advised not to rush him here. I know the team needs him. They need him to be, their second line center. They need him on the penalty kill. They need him for a lot of things. And of course, he's been through the very tough personal situation too. And psychologically, I think it's good for him to get back on the ice as soon as he can. But I think in terms of healing an injury and doing what's best for the hockey player, I think they can't rush this at all.
You mentioned Zach McEwen. Tell us about him.
He's a big, strong guy. He'll fight. He's actually one of the better young, tough guys around the NHL. Not an old-fashioned goon by any means, but he's a guy who will come in, and when the Flyers play against a Tom Wilson or they play against a Ryan Reeves, who's now with the Rangers, that's a guy who can answer the bell if he has to do that. I was actually a little bit surprised that Vancouver waived him. He was pretty highly regarded there as a guy who could play in the bottom end of the lineup. He had been a scorer at other levels, but that's not going to be what he does in the NHL. He'll just be he'll be a role player. But the Flyers. So that's actually the second guy the Flyers have claimed off waivers this week. They just claimed Patrick Brown from the Golden Knights earlier this week, and he'll be in the opening night roster, probably in the opening night lineup. And maybe Brown gets in at some point here pretty soon. But Brown will get in. McEwen will try to get into the lineup. But there were a couple of guys, Jackson Cates and a Phantoms player by the name of Garrett Wilson, who was on a tryout deal. Really, the signing of McEwen is bad news for Garrett Wilson because it means he stays in the American League.
All right. One of the things we have to talk about is the goalie. Carter Hart did not have the kind of year anybody expected last year. We thought he was going to be maybe, an instant star. Didn't happen that way in his sophomore year. I guess a lot of guys have the sophomore jinx or whatever. What can we expect from the young goalie this year?
I think Carter will be fine. I think if you look at Carter's season last year, I thought that he played better than his numbers early on. And actually, it was a bunch of games against the Bruins, up into that game, the outdoor game, that kind of made his numbers look mediocre. And then when the team struggled in March, he truly hit the skids. He was a big part of the problem because he had no confidence, a lot of glove side issues and whatnot. I mean, Carter was as much of an issue as everybody else on the team. But I mean, something that kind of got lost in last year's story was that by April and his last several starts, Carter started to look more like himself again. I thought he did. And then he had to get shut down, a little bit early last season because of a knee issue. Carter looked very good in the preseason and in camp. He missed a couple of days with the minor injury. You cross your fingers with that a little bit because Carter has had a couple of injury issues in his career. He's another guy you can't have missing time. But I think Carter Hart should be fine.
And he's got a new backup this year. Brian Elliott gone. Martin Jones now the backup. He was pretty good a few years ago. How much time should we expect him to get?
Well, that'll depend on as much on Carter, and I mean he's gonna see his share because the Flyers are going to pay the price for a pretty relaxed schedule early. Flyers don't start till Friday, and most of the league will play a game or two by then, and they have a 4-game homestand with days off in between there. Of course, everybody's playing 82 and it's an Olympic year, so the schedule's compacted. Flyers are going to have a whole lot of back-to-back games and a whole lot of 3s and 4s because of this kind of relaxed start at the beginning. So Jones is going to see his share of games. I would say about 30 games maybe. They need, they rolled the dice a little bit with Martin Jones. Jones is a guy who, when he was a workhorse starter for a number of years with San Jose. He got into a Stanley Cup final. He got into a conference final. But the last 2 years have been very poor. And it was hard to say how much of it was bad defense in front of him because San Jose as a team just was not very good anymore the last couple of years. But the goaltending wasn't bailing them out either, and the goaltending was part of the issue. So the Flyers are rolling the dice that Jones at 31 can go back somewhat closer to the form he was before and adapt a little different role because he was used to being the starter. Here he's the backup. So it's if that remains to be seen. And he had a kind of an up and down, little bit up and down preseason too.
We haven't mentioned the captain yet, Claude Giroux. He's certainly not the player he used to be, not a 100-point guy anymore. But how much does Giroux have left in the tank?
I think and he had a really good preseason too. Giroux last year had a funky year because his 5-on-5 numbers were fine. I mean, if you look around the league, he had more 5-on-5 points than Ovechkin, more 5-on-5 points than Backstrom, TJ Oshie, Jamie Benn, Anze Kopitar. I mean, still all top players in the league. More 5-on-5 points than Patrice Bergeron, but his power play points were gone. His power play points were really off target last year. I mean, the team struggled in the power play, but Giroux is the catalyst on the power play. I think Giroux should still be a very productive player. I agree with you that he's not a 100-point player or probably even a point-per-game player. But I think Giroux has plenty in the tank, and of course he has a lot riding on it too because this is the last year of his contract.
All right, 2 more questions. What is the outlook? Will the Flyers make the playoffs, and can they win a round or two?
I think this is on paper a playoff team. The problem being that the Metro is a very tough division. So, to get the automatic playoff spot, you have to finish in the top 3. But I look at this team and I say I see a wild card team. Maybe, I think you could have 5 teams from the Metro in the playoffs. And then the other 3 would be the top 3, from the Northeast Division. But I think that it's, I think the team can get into the playoffs, and then it all depends on how healthy you are, what your matchups are. I mean, potentially the team could advance a little bit in the playoffs, but there's a whole lot to prove between now and then.
And Bill, please forgive me for this, but you once posted it, so I'm going to assume you're not going to kill me when I show this. But who is this guy, and what is he wearing exactly?
That would be me. You couldn't go to stores and buy Flyers jerseys back then. My first sports hero was Bobby Clark. And so that orange and black shirt with number 16, I wore that every single day when the weather got cold. Maybe even when the weather started to get a little bit warm again. So that was everyday wear for me. And I just, I've loved the Flyers as long as I have memories. So.
You look like you were what, about 7 there?
I think I'm about 6, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Bill, tell everybody where they can follow you. HockeyBuzz.com. Where else? You're writing a whole bunch of things for the alumni.
Yeah, I'm the official site contributor for the Flyers official website. So flyers.nhl.com. You'll find my work there most days during the week. I am the editorial manager, content manager for the Flyers Alumni Association. So if you go on Flyers Alumni Twitter or into FlyersAlumni.net, that's my work there. And as you said, Hockey Buzz, you can find me there every day too.
Awesome. And now you're going to go watch some Lehigh Valley Phantoms action and report on them. So good luck. Have a great night and enjoy the Flyers season, Bill.
Thanks, Chad. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.